Hi there, this is David and welcome to the top 10 RPGs of the past decade, 2010 to 2019. Here I'll be looking at the past 10 years and choosing what I feel to be the best RPG released in that year and featuring it. I'll be going in order by the year, starting with 2010 and ending with 2019. Please keep in mind that I'm not using any sort of metric. I'm not looking at reviews, Metacritic, sales, or anything like that. Instead, I'm just going to be going by personal experience and fun factor. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this look back at the past 10 years. From 2010, we have Dragon Quest IX. As many of you know, Dragon Quest is my favorite series of all time, probably because I was raised on the NES games. However, hearing the reports that it was going to turn into an action RPG made me wary, and this was compounded by the fact that it would be the first mainline title released for a handheld. To say that I was a bit skeptical is an understatement. Thankfully, Japanese fans blew a gasket, and the game remained turn-based, and, like any good Dragon Quest game, it's unabashedly basic, harkening back to its classic class system. The world map is a joy to explore with treasures and crafting ingredients strewn about, and on-screen monster encounters, a first for the series. Importantly, when you think that you're done and you finish the main story, it's far from over, because there are untold numbers of grottos to explore. You could literally dump hundreds of hours into this epic. From 2011, we have Radiant Historia. Every time I see an Atlas title, I get a little bit excited. They're always so different and unfailingly good, and I'm so happy that the company is around to fill a much-needed niche for the JRPG enthusiast. So I was rightfully thrilled when Radiant Historia was not only announced, but slated as the DS's answer to Chrono Trigger. I just knew that I had to get it. They weren't joking either. The story's masterfully told, and the grid-based battle system is innovative. I wish that other titles would do something similar. Normally, when I play a game for the first time, I go through it with a guide to make sure that I get everything. I just don't have the time for multiple playthroughs anymore. But this was a notable exception. I savored every last moment of Radiant Historia, and even without a guide, I was able to see everything because of the way the game allows you to reset the timeline after seeing the various false endings. If any game has ever deserved its own series, it's Radiant Historia. And from 2012, we have Xenoblade Chronicles. The Wii had some good RPGs on it. I mean, it wasn't a complete waste of money like the Xbox and the Vita, but it was still disappointing when good games didn't get localized. This came to a head when Xenoblade was passed over for international release. I joined Operation Rainfall on Facebook. I even created a Twitter account and clamored for the release of Xenoblade and, to a lesser extent, Pandora's Tower and The Last Story. When Nintendo of America was still being stubborn and refusing to localize the game, Nintendo of Europe saved the day and they said that they would do it. I had such little faith in Nintendo at the time that I imported the game from Europe and I modded my Wii with the help of an article on Kokoto, and it was worth it. Xenoblade could be the game of the decade, not of just 2012. I loved every second of it. From the beautiful setting on the back of the Bionis, to the story, to the battle system, even the heart-to-hearts and the discovery points, everything is just spectacular. Maybe some failing RPG franchises could look at this game as a template on how to do a next-generation RPG right. From 2013, we have Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch. I bought the PlayStation 3 when Final Fantasy XIII came out, and while I enjoyed the game, it wasn't what I was expecting. And while there was the odd RPG, as well as the Tales series to justify the purchase of the system, I wasn't truly happy with it until I got Ni no Kuni. I don't watch anime, and I've never really heard of Studio Ghibli before, but they definitely have a fan in me now. After reading quite a few articles and playing the demo, I was so hyped for the game that I bought the Wizards edition that came in a huge box with a drippy plushie and a hardcover guide, and it was well worth the price. The towns are lovingly crafted, with each region having its own unique culture and landscape. The world map alone makes this game worth playing. Why RPGs have moved away from explorable world maps will forever be a mystery to me. The masterfully crafted ambiance of the world just made me fall in love with it. From 2014, we have Tales of Hearts R. So, we got these games on the DS, but we never got the 3 Tales games? I'll never understand what's going through the heads of these game developers. Of the 3 DS Tales games, Tales of Hearts was easily the best one, with Hideo Baba even saying that it was his favorite Tales game. So when I heard that the 3 games are going to be remade for the Vita, I knew that I had to get them, as well as the system. Unfortunately, the Innocence remake never made it here, and poor Tempest never got the remake that it so desperately needed. But we did get Hearts, and boy, did it live up to its reputation. The characters are funny, the skits are enjoyable, and the towns and dungeons are a joy to explore as well. But most importantly for me was the world map. I love a good world map. Interconnected zones just don't really do it for me. It's really a shame how Sony treated the Vita in the West though. It deserved better. From 2015, we have Trails in the Sky, Second Chapter. The Legend of Heroes games are an acquired taste. They do take a bit of a time investment, but if you're willing to give that investment, they will pay you back in spades. And after that cliffhanger ending in the first chapter, I knew that I had to get the second game. Every time that I mention a Trails game, I inevitably get the same question. What makes this series so great? Well, let me try to explain that here. Imagine your favorite Final Fantasy game. Let's use 6 as an example. Imagine that the first game only covered the beginning up to where the scenario split off. You would only really get to explore Narshe, Figaro, and South Figaro in depth, but you would get to know the people living there and be involved in the minutiae of their lives. Further sequels would then expand on those areas while introducing a few more, until finally, when the whole saga is released, the entire story of the game can be told. Think of each entry in this series as a piece of a puzzle, and the entire puzzle won't be put together until you play each entry. It's a masterclass in world building, and man am I glad that I discovered such a great franchise this decade. From 2016, we have Bravely Second and Lair. I don't ask for much, really. Give me a party of 4 warriors, a class-changing system, and an explorable world map filled with secrets, towns, and dungeons, and I'm a happy man. I don't need hyper-realistic graphics, J-pop songs, DLC, or even voice acting to have a good time. All I really want is good gameplay. However, the Final Fantasy series just failed to deliver time and time again this decade, but picking up the slack was their Bravely series, a deliberate throwback to the simpler times. And while 4 Heroes of Light had its issues with inventory space and a revolving door party, and Bravely Default's second half was abysmal, Bravely Second cleaned it up, and it's better for it. From 2017, we have Tales of Berseria. I know that the popular opinion is to rag on Zestiria and say that it's terrible, but aside from its entirely too convoluted equipment and battle systems, I didn't think it was that bad. So I was rightfully excited when a prequel was announced taking place 1,000 years in the past. And whereas Sora was bright, happy, and upbeat throughout his adventure in a rose-colored world, Velvet's Tale is anything but. This kind of threw me for a loop when I first played it, but I've gotta say, it is better for it. Velvet's quest for revenge is dark and gritty, and I love how she breaks from the typical protagonist mold to be a vengeful, spiteful, murderous bitch. It's such a breath of fresh air to have a leader who isn't a complete goody two-shoes Mary Sue. That being said though, I do like how she, along with the help of Laphicet, slowly evolves back to her old self over the course of the game. From 2018, we have Dragon Quest XI. It's no secret that Dragon Quest is my favorite series of all time. I was raised on it after all. However, with the releases slowed to 1 per console generation, I have to savor them all the more when they hit the market. Let me just say that Dragon Quest XI blew me away. It took everything that made Dragon Quest VIII so great and it upped the ante. Encounters are on screen. The party size is now doubled. The weapon tree system is greatly expanded, and importantly, it's not unforgiving like it was back in 8. You're free to explore and experiment with the system at your own pace. Also, just like 8's endgame harkened a bit back to 3, with the introduction of Ramia and the 6 orbs, 11 does the same thing, only to an even greater extent. Dragon Quest XI plays like the game that they always wanted to make, they just weren't able to because of hardware limitations. Everything is just done with such a loving polish. It's hard to believe that people in the West still won't give this series a chance. It's a classic in my eyes. And from 2019, we have Legend Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3. Piggybacking off the allegory that I used to describe Trails in the Sky's second chapter taking place in the Kingdom of Figaro, I would have to say that the Cold Steel games would then take place in Vector. While the series did have a slow start, Trails of Cold Steel 2 picked up the pace, and the third game of the series blew it out of the water. Here we're finally able to explore the second half of Erebonia, and while we lose the airship and go back to the general field study structure, it's not boring and needlessly dragged out like the first game tended to be. Also, not only do we get to use the original members from the first 2 games, but we also have new Class 7 members and characters joining us from Liberl as well as Crossbell. This is a love letter to the fans of the series who stuck it out from day 1, as you're finally going to be learning tidbits of backstory about Joshua's origin that's been a mystery from the very first game. Well, I hope that you enjoyed the retrospective look back on what I feel were the best releases this decade. Do you agree or disagree? What are your favorites? Please let me know in the comments, and if you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.